So, Selena, we've got since we got my
So we have quorum.
our quorum here. Both our Steves are here. We'll go ahead and get started here. All right, let's. I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District on May 28th at 9:05 a.m. to order. If the clerk could please call the roll.
Director Carr. Director Daniels.
Here.
Director Frost.
Here.
Director Gaylord.
Here.
Director Guerra.
Here.
Director Hansen.
Here.
Director Harris.
Here.
Director Kennedy.
Here.
Director Lamson.
Here.
Director Lee.
Here.
Director Natoli. Director Peters. Director Cerna. Director Terry. Director Terry.
Sorry about that. Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. If everyone could please rise, and Director Ayala has a flag for us to join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Director Ayala, do you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance here, if you can unmute?
You ready? Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America.
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate that. Okay, Madam Clerk, do you mind reading the announcement for those watching online or on TV on Channel 14?
In compliance with directives of the State and Center for Disease Control and Prevention, the physical location of this meeting is closed to the public, consistent with state guidelines on social distancing and California Executive Order N2920. Members of the public are encouraged to participate in the meeting by observing the meeting in real time at www.sacmetrocable.tv, Zoom video conference, and by submitting written comments electronically by email at boardclerk@airquality.org. Comments submitted in person will be delivered to the Board of Directors by staff. Public comments regarding matters under the jurisdiction of the Board of Directors will be acknowledged by the chair and accepted until the adjournment of the meeting, distributed to the Board of Directors, and included in the record. The meeting of the Sacramento Metropolitan Air Quality Management District is cablecast live without interruption on Metro Cable 14, the local government affairs channel on Comcast Consolidated Communications and AT&T U-verse cable system. This meeting is being closed captioned and will be webcast at www.sacmetrocable.tv. Today's meeting will be repeated on Friday, May 29th, 2020 at 6 p.m. and Sunday, May 31st, 2020 at 2 p.m. on Channel 14.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We'll go ahead and commence with our Air Pollution Control Officer's report. Good morning, Dr. Ayala.
Good morning, Chair Guerra, and good morning, members of the board. It's good to have you all here. I wanna do a couple of brief updates, and
I'm sorry, can I interrupt for just a second? I have Director Carr on the line.
Okay.
Good morning,
Madam Clerk, I think
Director
you're gonna pull up a slide.
Yes. 1 second.
Thank you. So we just have a couple brief items to brief you on. The first one, as you can see, is we just want to share with you some of the information that we are tracking broadly to try to assess what the impact of the crisis and the recession itself, the economic recession, is going to be on us, on the district, on our activities, and obviously our budget. The second item that I want to share with you is some activity that we've been a part of related to the proposed May revision of the state budget. And then a third item that didn't make it onto the slide, but it's a pretty important item that we need to make you aware of, and I'm going to rely on District Council to give you an update, is the filing of a motion that we joined with a couple other air districts, the state and a few other states, challenging the final federal rule on vehicle emissions. So we'll get into that in a minute. So on the first item, as we had discussed previously, we've committed to keeping track of different metrics that hopefully will help us understand what the impact of the recession on the budget for the agency is going to be. We looked at one key metric for us, which is the number of permit applications that we get. And when we look at the current 2-month period, so March and April relative to the same period in 2019, we really haven't seen a decrease in new permit applications, which obviously is a good sign. But I think it's just a lag. I think in the next couple of months and more, we may begin to see a downturn in terms of the activity that is related. In terms of actual permit applications, if you compare strictly this period, this year versus last year, we're actually at a higher number at this point. So again, it's something that we're tracking, but we don't think that the session has reflected on these permit applications just yet. Another area that the district has responsibility over is obviously construction, and specifically asbestos projects. When something related to asbestos is taking place in our jurisdiction, we get notice, we get involved. In this particular area, we have seen a slight decrease in the number of projects coming in, but again, nothing that would suggest that it's a deep downturn given the recession. Another thing that we talked about last time is obviously we want to be responsible and do what we can to help our entities that need to comply with our rules. So far, we've only been asked to work out payment plans for 4 entities in our district. And we're talking about 4 businesses out of more than 2,000 that have to get permits from us. So, again, that's a metric that hasn't really shown that the recession has manifested itself. So these are some of the things that we're going to continue to track. Another area that is a core area for our district is CEQA and land use planning. As you know, we have an awesome team that is very engaged and leading the charge in this area across the region and the state. And when you look at the CEQA projects that the team is reviewing, we're actually up for the current year relative to last year. So again, it's one of those things where I think the impact of the recession is going to be lagging for a couple of months. Another direction we got from the board that has to do with understanding the impact on our budget is to talk to other sister agencies and other jurisdictions that are trying to understand the impacts just as we are. We talked to the county, the city of Sacramento, SACOG, and certainly other air districts. And I think, again, we are very consistent in our approach in that, most are expecting a reduction in revenue on the order of maybe, 1 to 20%, depending on the district, which is very consistent with the 2 scenarios, the moderate and the severe scenario for the budget assessment that we discussed with you previously. I think, obviously, no one is imposing fee increases. If anything, we're going to keep them flat or reduce them. From the federal project standpoint, things are pretty stable. I think things are just going to take a little while to get worked out. The state budget, which I'm going to get into in a minute, is one that it's already out, and obviously we are going to be anticipating some significant impacts. But again, that's going to happen next fiscal year. The projects and the funding for cleaner projects that we are trying to put in place now has already been committed from the previous fiscal year. In terms of expenditures for the agency, You are going to be voting on our final budget in a moment. We presented to you last time, and we are prepared per the employee agreement to adjust by way of the cost of living increase that we discussed with you. So we're ready in that regard. We are, like many agencies and jurisdictions, imposing a soft hiring freeze. And we qualify it as soft because I think to the extent that there is a critical vacancy that needs to be backfilled, we want to retain that option. And then the final thing I'll say on this is again, most organizations like we are putting in place placeholder budgets simply because at this time, we do need to get a final budget approved for next fiscal year, but we just don't have the information necessary to be able to make adjustments. So obviously we're committed to coming back to you with an adjusted and amended budget later on. And this is the information that we're tracking. So that is the first item. Let me pause for a moment in case there's any questions. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next one.
Thank you, Dr. Ayala. I don't see any board members using the raise hand button. I'll go to the phone here. Any of our board members on the phone have a question for Dr. Ayala?
Director Guerra, I just want to let you know I joined the meeting. Don Natoli.
Hey, good morning, Supervisor. Yeah, I've got Supervisor Natoli and Mayor Lee as our board members on the phone today. Thank you, everyone, for joining. And since there are no other questions for Dr. Ayala, let's go ahead and proceed to our next item, which is the consent calendar. Are there any questions or a motion on the consent calendar?
I'm sorry, Chair. There's a couple more things that I need to discuss as part of the APCR report.
Oh, that is correct. There was the third piece here. Go ahead, Dr. Ayala.
All right. So the other thing is we've submitted a comment letter on the proposed state budget. And specifically, we are asking for the administration to prioritize and identify funding specifically for some of the cleaner projects that are priority for us. AB 617, community air protection, is at the top of the list, plus a couple of others. And the only thing I wanted to highlight for the board is we have actually written in conjunction with other air districts, as well as ourselves, on the specific proposed May revision of the budget. You should have a copy of those letters in your packet. So if you have any questions, please let us know. So just wanted to highlight that for you. And then the third and final item is, again, we have taken action and
raised hand by Director Kennedy.
Yes, Director Kennedy, did you want to ask the question now, or do you want to wait till after his?
I'll wait, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. The last one, like I said, is an action that we've taken just literally yesterday, along with a couple of other districts, challenging the federal administration's rollback of the clean car standards. As you know, transportation is the largest source of air and climate pollution. Of that sector, passenger cars and light trucks make up most of the population. So to the extent that those emission standards get rolled back, it's just going to mean that we're just going to have to go somewhere else to get emission reductions. It's a bit of a scramble because SACOG is going to have to go back and take a second look at the approved MTPSCS, because again, now there's going to be excess emissions that we have not accounted for. So this is going to play out over the next several months. Obviously, we don't know how long the legal process is going to take, but let me turn it to District Counsel so she can give you a more precise description. Kathy?
Good morning, Kathy.
Sorry, I just had to unmute. Thank you, Alberto. The petition that we filed, actually it was filed this morning, is sort of a sister petition to a petition that ARB filed yesterday, challenging Part 2 of the EPA and NHTSA Highway Transportation Safety Agency, NHTSA regulations that grossly lowered or raised, I guess, actually loosened the standards for emissions from cars and light trucks. They went from the difference is about 3.5%. the fuel efficiency went from 54 miles per gallon that was going to be required in the model years 2021 to 26 to 40 miles per gallon. So as Alberto's already indicated, that's potentially going to have some major impacts to the district, to the entire state. So we filed jointly with South Coast and the Bay Area. We're coordinating very closely with the state AG's office because they're taking the lead in the action. And this is kind of a sister petition to the one that the board also authorized a few months ago, challenging the Part 1 regulation, which essentially revoked California's federal waiver, authorizing it to set emission standards. That action primarily impacted electric vehicle goals and objectives of the state. This Part 2 will significantly disrupt the plans for achieving federal standards and state standards due to its impact on all cars and light duty trucks.
Thank you, Kathy. Appreciate that. Dr. Aiello, does that conclude your APCIO report?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll go to Director Kennedy here. Questions for the APCIO or our council?
Thank you, Chair. I think we all agree that when this whole thing is over, when and if, and we get back to whatever normal looks like, that we're going to miss an opportunity if we go back to business as usual. We don't want to utilize technology to the degree that we currently are, but I think we can use it better and more often than we did, which would take a lot of cars off the road. So Dr. Aiello, I guess my question to you is, are we compiling the data to show the difference pre-COVID-19 to moving out and to show the difference in our air quality and the difference that it made by the stay-at-home measures? And I think that we can utilize that data to really encourage companies to better utilize their personnel and reduce trips by as many as 10% a day. And that's just a number off the top of my head. Are we compiling that data, and are we going to use it in a way that is proactive?
Thank you for the question, Director Kennedy. Excellent question. Short answer is yes. We've actually implemented a very specific study to get to the data that you are speaking about, and that is we are proactively working with our contractors on collecting the very data that will allow us to put a number to quantify what the benefit of the shelter in place has been from an air quality standpoint. And in addition to that, we are working very closely with our sister agencies like SACOG and SACRT and others, so that we can articulate a coordinated direction and suggestion in terms of getting to the point that you are suggesting. What makes sense for the region going forward, so that we can get a balance of, like you're saying, continue to take the benefits of what we are doing right now, and at the same time, try to get back to normal. This is front and center for many of us in the region, and I'm confident that we're going to be at a good point once we're ready to actually make some decisions in terms of how much teleworking is going to make sense, how much still transit is going to make sense, how much VMT reductions is going to make sense in the future. So I'll take your question as direction to come back to you and give you an update once we have a little more information.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Aiello. And I believe you're having those conversations also with SMUD as well, as it relates to looking at clean technology in combination with telecommuting. Is that correct, Dr. Aiello?
Correct. As you know, we all have a different responsibility over transportation emissions. I'm just going to say that, and we are in constant communication, and we're all interested in the very thing that you are asking, board members. So, like I said, we'll take your question in terms of we'll come back and give you an update once we have a better idea in terms of how we're going to move forward in a coordinated fashion.
Great, thanks. If there are no other questions for our Air Pollution Control Officer, we'll go ahead and commence with our action items for the day. Seeing none, we'll move on, Madam Clerk, to the consent calendar. Are there questions from folks on the telephone?
No,
Seeing none? Oh, go ahead. Don?
no, I didn't have questions.
Okay,
Director.
thanks. Okay. Moving on to the consent calendar here. Do I have any questions from the board or a motion?
I move the consent calendar, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. It's been moved by Director Natoli. Is there a second?
Second.
Still second.
It's been seconded by Director Harris. Any further discussion on the consent calendar? Madam Clerk, any comments from the public on the consent calendar?
I have no public comment from the public.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Seeing no further questions or comments, all those in favor? Oh, I think we have to do a roll call here. Madam Clerk, can you do the roll call vote?
Yes. Can I have the directors unmute their microphones for just a second? Director Carr?
Aye.
Director Daniels?
Aye.
Director Frost?
Aye.
Director Gaylord?
Aye.
Director Guerra?
Aye.
Director Hansen?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
Director Kennedy?
Aye.
Director Lamson?
Aye.
Director Lee?
Aye.
Director Natoli?
Aye.
Director Peters? Absent. Director Cerna? Absent. Director Terry?
Aye.
Consent passes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. That measure passes. Unanimous vote. Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on our agenda, the discussion calendar. Item number 7, Urban Heat Island Project. And I think we had a preliminary conversation about this a while back, and now we're back with some recommendations.
And I have Shelley Zhang on the phone who's going to give a presentation.
Good morning, Shelley.
Hi, good morning. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Great. Thank you. My name is Shelley Zhang, and I work in the Air District's Climate Change and Transportation Division. I'm here to speak to you about the growing challenge of extreme heat and urban heat in Sacramento. I don't have to tell you that it's hot today. It's the third day in which temperatures will go over 100. Next slide, please, Selena. It's highly unusual already to have 3 days over 100 degrees in May, and we can only expect more heat waves like this as time goes on. Heat poses a number of health risks, such as heat stroke. It also worsens ozone pollution. During this highly challenging time of the COVID-19 pandemic, this heat wave will also lead to additional health risks to our vulnerable community members, such as those who lack or can't afford air conditioning, the elderly, and those with existing health conditions. Many of those vulnerable to extreme heat are also vulnerable to COVID-19. Traditional cooling refuges, such as libraries, cooling centers, or community centers will not be open. That's why it's more urgent than ever now to reduce urban heat in our neighborhoods and in our homes. I also want to point out that heat poses risks to our public agencies and businesses. It damages roads and asphalts and airport runways by causing the asphalt to buckle. And this increases maintenance costs. Heat can also damage railways and bridge joints and slow down light rail operations in Sacramento. It also reduces productivity and increases health risks for outdoor workers, such as those in the construction and agricultural industries, as well as workers who work in unconditioned spaces, like many do in delivery warehouses. To respond to this challenge next slide. To respond to this challenge of extreme heat and develop solutions for urban cooling, the Sacramento Air District led the Capital Region Urban Heat Island Mitigation Project. This project was funded by Caltrans from an SB1 adaptation planning grant. We worked with a local government commission with a technical advisory committee from around the region. You may remember that I provided an interim project update last August, and now that the project is complete, I'd like to share with you some of our major findings and takeaways. Next slide, please. Here are the major cooling strategies that are recommended by this project. The first is to increase tree canopy by 12 percentage points in the region, starting with the areas with the least tree canopy. Second, to increase cool pavements and cool roofs so that the average albedo increases by 0.25 to 0.35 in the region. Quick aside, what is albedo? Albedo is a ratio from 0 to 1 that describes how much solar heat a surface reflects. In asphalt, which is very dark, has a low albedo close to 0, and it absorbs much of the incoming heat. And a cool roof or a lighter pavement, like a white roof or a white pavement, it has an albedo that's much closer to 1, which means that it reflects all of this heat. So a 0.25 to 0.535 increase in average albedo is pretty significant. And then also, a number of other strategies can also help to increase urban cooling, such as increasing zero emissions vehicle deployment, solar photovoltaic shading of parking lots and ground covers, infill development, cool walls, and other cooling strategies. And finally, another important strategy is to coordinate and cooperate with the regional jurisdictions and organizations to maximize cooling benefits and develop consistent policies. Next slide, please. The first major takeaway that I wanted to share is that the urban heat island effect is a major challenge for our region, and it doesn't look quite the way that you would expect. You can see that the urban heat island is worse in Roseville, Citrus Heights, Folsom, Auburn, and the northeastern part of the unincorporated county. These are areas that are generally thought of as being more suburban than urban Sacramento, which in fact actually has a lower heat island effect, even though the tree canopy is lower there and there are more industrial places with more pavements. That's because the heat is pushed up to the north and to the east through the wind and the delta breeze. So the air gets warmed up over urban Sacramento, and then that warmed air is traveling up to the foothills, much like our air pollution. This shows the 24 hours average urban heat island index in the region. And so you can see where it's particularly hot. Next slide, please. And then so one thing that we wanted to do in this report is to really identify the priority areas for urban heat island mitigation. And this is what this slide shows. This shows the priorities when both the urban heat island effect and the actual absolute daily temperatures are taken into account. So not just where the heat island effect is worse, but where the daytime temperatures are the higher as well. These areas are some 7 to 10 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than their surrounding rural areas, which on a day like today can make a big difference in how you feel. So the image on the left shows the highest priority areas, which again include Auburn, Roseville, Folsom, Lincoln, and Citrus Heights. And the right side image shows the second highest priority areas, which include Natomas, North Highlands, Del Paso, parts of Folsom and Citrus Heights in the northeast part of the county, as well as Yuba City and Marysville. Next slide, please. The third and perhaps the most important takeaway is that solutions available today deployed at realistic levels can help to reduce the urban heat island effect. As I mentioned, the three most effective strategies are increasing the tree canopy and increasing the surface lightness or reflectiveness through cool roofs and cool pavements. While these strategies are all very effective, they work differently at different times of day. Trees provide more cooling at night through the evapotranspiration effect, whereas cool roofs and cool pavements have their biggest impact during the daytime and the afternoon when the city is getting a lot of direct sunlight. Thus, the most effective mitigation solution that we modeled included both of these strategies deployed as complementary measures. We also investigated other measures that are not traditionally affected with urban cooling and urban heat island reduction. These include electric vehicles, which don't release waste heat from the engine and the tailpipes, infill, which also prevents the conversion of wild and rural lands and eliminates the new paving of new sprawl developments. We also looked at solar photovoltaic pavements, which actually are very effective at reducing temperatures when they are placed over parking lots and other paved surfaces. We found, interestingly, that solar PV had no negative effect on the urban heat island when they're placed over roofs, but nor do they help to really cool the city. So actually, they had sort of a neutral impact, which is important with California's new building code coming in. Next slide, please. This takeaway we also really wanted to highlight is that the strategies have the greatest impact when they are adopted in concert with neighboring upwind jurisdictions. Similar to how the warm air can spread across the region, cooler air can also be transported across jurisdictions. So for each measure here shown in the chart, the lower bar shows the impact of when a jurisdiction acts alone to implement a measure. The total size of the bar, when you account for the light size part of the bar as well, shows a combined cooling effect when jurisdictions implement measures together. So when a city like Folsom or Roseville or Natomas or an area, when they implement cooling measures together, the combined effect through everyone implementing these cooling measures helps the cool air spread across the region. This can also double or triple the effectiveness of urban heat island mitigation in many areas, as you can see by the size of the bars. And in some areas, these measures can almost completely offset or eliminate the urban heat island effect, such as in Florin, Elk Grove, and South Sacramento. And I apologize, there's a little bit of construction noise coming through. And also notable is the effect of zero emissions vehicles when they're adopted in multiple jurisdictions. It's several times larger than the effect when a region pursues zero emissions vehicles alone. And I should note that the percentage of zero emissions vehicles modeled here is 25% of the fleet. Next slide, please. I've now shared a high-level overview of the project results, and the core findings can be found in our full reports. Now I'd like to mention some of the opportunities for implementing these solutions. Urban cooling strategies can be embedded in the existing public works projects, programs, and policies, as well as new targeted initiatives. Green infrastructure, cool and permeable pavements can be incorporated into existing road maintenance and road construction projects. They can also be part of pedestrian and bike path construction projects, as well as complete street projects. And you can see here some pictures of examples from our region. Agencies can also lead demo projects or pilot projects or offer streamlining for projects that do incorporate urban cooling strategies. Another idea is to adopt cool roof incentive programs or education programs, because cool roofs deliver individual levels to homeowners and businesses. They help the homeowner or building occupant save energy and pay for themselves in 5 years through the reduced air conditioning costs. Agencies can also help to support infill development, which can protect our natural and wild lands and reduce the construction of new paved surfaces, roofs, and roads, which can also help with urban heat island reduction. Next slide, please. So this is a conclusion of a 2-year project for us, but it doesn't stop here. For our next steps, we will be meeting with your public works and planning departments to introduce these reports and findings and work with them to find the appropriate solutions for your communities. We encourage these strategies to be incorporated into ongoing projects. Shovel-ready projects can be designed around these concepts for grant funding and stimulus or recovery funding. There are existing grant opportunities out there, such as the Natural Resources Agency's Urban Flood Protection Program and Urban Greening Grant, and Caltrans's Active Transportation Grant. We also know, for example, that the City of LA is developing shovel-ready projects around these concepts in Canoga Park and South El Monte to increase cool roofs and pavements and trees around their transit stations and active transportation corridors. And they're getting ready for the release of stimulus fundings with these shovel-ready project concepts. We'll also be working with the Capital Region Climate Readiness Collaborative to help introduce this project to other jurisdictions in our region outside of Sacramento County, because as the results show, regional coordination and regional implementation leads to the greatest cooling effects. We know that adopted at scale, these strategies can deliver regional and cooling benefits, protect public health, reduce ozone pollution, save money for businesses and agencies and residents, and increase quality of life for our region. So we hope that you'll take a look at our report, which will be on our website, and explore the maps in an interactive website that can help share these solutions. Thank you. I'm here to answer any questions if you may have them.
Thank you, Shelley. I appreciate the report. I've got, this is a receive and file. I have Director Harris.
Thank you, Chair. Shelley, I have an observation and two questions. First, in the 1970s, I worked in agriculture and I was outside most of the days of the year working as a commercial beekeeper. And I'd like to say that although it's hot today, it was much hotter in the 70s than we're experiencing in the last decade. In fact, we expected several days over 100 in May and about 2 weeks per year of temperatures over 105. It was common back then. You know, weather patterns have changed a lot. We used to have tule fog every winter. We haven't seen it for quite a while. But, you know, these periods of intense heat are cyclical. That's not to say that I'm a climate denier. I believe that you're right, that temperatures will, as you said in the report, inexorably rise because of climate change. And so adaptation is important, but I just wanted to remember that we have gone through periods of extreme heat in the valley over the decades, the 4 decades that I've lived here. The questions I have are two. First, you said that tree canopy is mostly a cooling agent at night due to evapotranspiration, but the fact of the matter is that tree canopy, like photovoltaics, cast shade on pavement and hardscape that absorb a lot of heat. So it seems to me they're very effective, probably as effective during the day as at night. So do you have anything to say about that?
Yeah, and I think what I meant there was that the tree canopy was most effective compared to other strategies, not that most effective compared to itself. Like at night, your other solutions aren't doing very much to cool it, but the trees are the most effective ones at night. So it was more in comparison to the other measures recommended in the report, and not to not saying that trees weren't effective in the daytime. Of course, they are very effective in the daytime, especially when they are planted over streets and parking lots to shade that pavement from incoming sunlight.
Exactly. So, you know, in terms of money spent for mitigation, planting trees is perhaps the most effective way to move forward to mitigate urban heat island effects, in my opinion, anyway.
I think that's definitely true, but one thing is that a tree will take time to mature. So doing cool roofs and cool pavements is more of an immediate benefit, whereas the tree canopy does take some time to get to that shade canopy maturity.
All the more reason to plant a tree today. The other question I had was about cool pavement materials. I'm interested in what's available today in terms of, is it possible to resurface existing roads with cool pavement? And also the second question is, since they're reflective of heat, I assume they're reflective of light as well. And have there been studies done on whether or not that is a hazard to motorists? Because, you know, driving on a white colored road could be blinding at times.
Yeah, that's a good question. And to answer the first part of it, there's a wide range of cool pavements that are available today. There are definitely both solutions for paving new roads, and there's also solutions for repaving existing roads and providing that maintenance. There is a chart that is in our report that lists different kinds of cool pavements for both new roads and reconstruction or repaving. And the glare issue, fortunately, the pavement engineers have considered this as well. So generally, the new pavement, these cool pavements are lighter than asphalt, but they are capped at how reflective they are or how bright they are to reduce that glare for motorists. So you really won't find a road with a sort of mirror-like surface. What we're really thinking is maybe like the difference between a concrete versus an asphalt. And asphalt really is very dark. It has a cool pavement rating of the albedo of it is below 0.1, whereas for our study, we capped the albedo of rows at 0.5, that we didn't look at anything above that. And then if you think about 1 being a fully white surface, that's sort of where you can think that it's like sort of halfway between a fully white surface and a dark asphalt.
Okay, thank you, Shelley. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much, Director Harris. Are there any members on the phone who have any questions for staff here?
Director Guerra, this is Member Natoli.
Go ahead, Director Natoli.
Yeah, I wanted to thank Jeff for his certain observations, having lived through the 70s and beyond, certainly up to this day. I think he made some good points about, peak periods of heat and so forth, and we may set records on any given day, but Sacramento summers can be hot, and there used to be a lot of fog, so those are both accurate, I think, reflections and that I have too, having lived here all my life. But I would just say I think the report certainly was thorough, a lot of information in the bulk of the report, but I appreciate Shelley's work, and I think some of the recommendations, particularly regarding a pavement and things we can do with trees and other things, are important aspects of things that, maybe a little bit at a time, but over time will add up, I think, to hopefully bring some of the desired effect of cooling and the environmental quality aspects for people who live, work, and play here in the Sacramento region. So anyway, I just wanted to thank for the thoroughness of the report. It's voluminous, but reflects, I think, a lot of good work and some important, I think, things for agencies, whether it's the County of Sacramento or others, to consider as part of our planning and building codes beyond what may be required by other entities in the state. So anyway, thanks, Shelley.
Thank you, Director Natoli, and we obviously appreciate your history here in Sacramento, and as you mentioned, and beyond, and hopefully more beyond here. So, Director Carr.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Shelley, it's a very good report. I've been dealing with this issue for well over 20 years, both at SMUD Board as well as Executive Director of the Flooring Road Partnership. And what we run into is that in the older areas that were built, especially the commercial areas, before the new design standards, we see this urban heat island effect. And we run into a lot of resistance trying to combat it. One is that the property owners are not inclined to plant trees into these parking lots. And the second one is that even if they were, it's very expensive to get water to them so they can take root. And then many of the older parking commercial areas have been subdivided and parceled out. So it becomes very difficult to get a comprehensive project in those areas. So the tree thing, we were able to plant trees in one parking lot with one owner who was cooperative, but we just ran into roadblock after roadblock in doing it. And then there's this whole business of donating public money to a private enterprise that makes it difficult to even incentivize the property owners to be inclined to do it. So I wonder if the strategies shouldn't be redesigned. Even though we have some that are very effective, like planting trees, it's almost impossible to do. So maybe we should focus on what's possible, what falls in the realm of possibilities. And one of the things that it seems to me would be the solar in the parking lots. Property owners would be inclined to accept them, provided they didn't have to pay for it, of course. And I think we could cover a significant portion of our commercial areas with solar in the parking lots. Trying to chase these guys down a hole to get them to accept trees in the parking lot is a difficult issue and may not ever get done. So I think your strategies are right. I think the what's doable is what's missing, and some of the things just are not doable. What's your reaction, Shelley?
I think those are all great comments, and that's definitely true. The reality of tree planting can be difficult, especially for areas that are older. So planting trees would require digging up the pavements and putting in new irrigation. I think that's why it's really important that we have strong local organizations like the Sacramento Tree Foundation that helps to provide the education and assistance to businesses that are interested in tree planting. Another thing to think about is that even though the money to plant trees, it may seem like it's public money going to a private entity, the benefits from those trees are not enjoyed by the property owners alone. The benefits of trees are shared across the neighbors and all the residents in that area, in that the trees providing clean air, cooling benefits, water runoff management, all of these benefits accrue to everyone in the neighborhood, even if the tree is on one person's property. And then, yes, I do think that solar PV shading can provide an excellent alternative to to business owners that may not want the trees in their over their parking lot, because the solar PV, they can generate electricity, they can help maybe send some electricity back to the grid through SMUD, and so it could be seen more as a sort of investment for them rather than and something that they benefit. And you also get the additional benefit of having cooler cars for people when they park there. So who wouldn't want to get into a cooler car in the summer?
Thank you, Shelley. Director Carr, did that answer your question?
Yes, it did, and I agree. We should try to do that. I'm just saying, in my experience over 20 years doing it, we've been able to convince one property on one corridor, and that to pursue that strategy of trying to convince property owners to plant trees is a huge challenge. And there are other things that may be a little more expensive and maybe not as effective in trees that should be pursued because they are doable. The tree thing is out of the realm of doing to me in the commercial corridors. As for those businesses and parking lots that were built before the new design standards.
Definitely true. I agree with you. It is difficult. And that's why our report offers a suite of solutions, from the solar PV covering of parking lots to actually, if you have to maintain your parking lots, to use the cooler surface coatings, which can also help you reduce long-term maintenance costs. That could be something that's more amenable to a commercial corridor. If we can say, oh, you only have to repave every 12 years instead of every 10 years or something like that.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you very much, Director Carr. And I think there's a couple takeaways here, seeing that there are no other members requesting to speak. Madam Clerk, do we have any members of the public who signed up to speak?
We do have one member of the public that signed up to speak.
Okay, we'll go to the members of the public here before I close this item out here. Go ahead.
I have Torin Donovan on the line.
Hi there. Thank you very much. I'm really appreciative for the opportunity to speak and to the thoughtfulness and leadership of this board. This project is something that we were really proud to participate in as a member of the Technical Advisory Committee. It's important research, but it's also really amazing to see how well run and how well rounded the effort was. And so we're thankful for that. For us, it's been very helpful to see how this project has come together, what the research output is. And it really helps us with our focus on under canopied neighborhoods. And for us, it highlights these needs. I mean, certainly Councilmember Carr, has a lot of experience with this issue. But in commercial corridors are extremely difficult But for us, it highlights that planting more trees, the largest trees possible on private property that shade public space like sidewalks and streets is essential. But also what we can hopefully do with this research is fulcrum it to persuade large landholders like school districts and Caltrans to allow for more planting in those spaces and build partnerships with cities and municipalities to support the planting and the caring of those trees to make sure they're well established. It's essential that we take action now because these heat impacts that we're talking about are making drastic impacts to public health. And like Councilmember or Vice Mayor Harris said, we need to start now so that these benefits can be reaped as soon as possible for planting trees. The research that's being shared here merges very well with the City of Sacramento and City of West Sacramento's Climate Commission studies are showing, and sets the goals for a 35% tree canopy coverage by 2045. And that's exactly what this research shows, what the impacts of that can be. So it helps us to prioritize our focus. And it also helps us recognize that there's importance to push for robust urban forests in new residential development, which is being experienced in a lot of the areas that are going to be most impacted by heat, as in the report that Shelley shared. So we look really, into the future to collaboration with the district in pursuing opportunities to implement. And I just really want to thank you all and commend you all for your vision and leadership with this project.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Madam Clerk, is that all the public comment?
I actually have one more public comment. I have Jenny Bard on the line.
Go ahead, Jenny.
My name is Jenny Bard. I am the Director of Health Partnerships for the American Lung Association, and I work with medical and health organizations to support strong clean air and climate policies in California. So I'm very pleased to be speaking with you today. The Lung Association appreciates your presentation and the innovative focus on this important issue. We know that the urban heat island effect creates many public health challenges. Extreme heat can be extremely deadly, especially for people who work outside, people without homes, young children, the elderly, and people with pre-existing medical conditions such as heart disease and diabetes and lung disease, according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Worsening heat can have serious impacts on health, especially lung health. Heat makes air pollution worse, which increases risk to lung health, including asthma attacks and premature death. Warmer temperatures make ozone pollution more likely to form, as was mentioned, and climate change increases the frequency and intensity of wildfires, which create particle pollution. So the research that you've highlighted today shines a light on important actions that we can take that will help to increase resiliency, cut pollution, and build community health. So we thank you for that. We also appreciate the inclusion of electric vehicles and infill development in this topic. We view that focus as vital to helping to reduce vehicle emissions and boost healthier transportation, including transit, walking, bicycling, and zero-emission vehicles. On a personal note, it was very interesting to hear about the heat transport. My daughter and her family live in Auburn, so I regularly drive there. I have driven an electric car exclusively for 7 years, and so I'm pleased to learn that EVs not only reduce air pollution, but that they're not contributing to the region's urban heat islands and are a solution to this problem. And so, as you point out, with the huge benefits of a regional focus, it makes sense to view these strategies in a regional sense, and we look forward to supporting future efforts on this front. Finally, on the state budget issue, which was mentioned at the beginning, the American Lung Association has also submitted a letter to the legislature in support of continued investments in clean transportation and other clean air programs to protect lung health from the burdens of transportation pollution. So we thank the Air District for that support as well. And we are also committed to California's leadership on clean cars and appreciate the Air District's leadership and comments today. Finally, we just really appreciate the relationship that we have with the district staff and look forward to continued partnership and helping the public understand air quality and taking actions to improve our health. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Jenny. Madam Clerk, is that Any, does that conclude the public comment?
Yes, it does.
Thank you very much. Well, first I want to thank the staff and all our comments from the board members and the public. I think this is a critical report. One, it shows the need for us to work regionally, collaboratively. I think it, and also for us to understand that what happens in one jurisdiction also affects another. The fact that Citrus Heights and Roseville and other areas bear the brunt of the heat being produced in one area and moving to the other means that we should all be thinking about our fellow neighbors. The other piece here is that there are short-term solutions and long-term solutions that we need to address. And I think to Director Harris's comments about planting now for benefits for the future and resiliency, it's critical. And the fact is that we have more opportunities to plant than we have actual bodies and resources to do so. So there are numerous areas where we can take advantage of planting trees now. And then the point of Director Carr mentioned that there are as deploying of rooftop solar and figuring out other ways that we can work with businesses. I represent Stockton Boulevard, and we have the same challenges of old commercial corridors that as we rebuild them, there might be opportunities to use trees, but in the older sections that are already built out, we may have to look at a different approach, such as PV parking coverings. To that point, I also wanted to say that in one thing that I think Director Ayala left out in his APCO report was a brief conversation we had yesterday with our lobbying and advocacy team. As the governor is producing a 10% reduction in state agencies, and we are pushing and advocating for what we need as an agency. There are also conversations in the legislature about funding a new type of WPA or work program to get people affected by COVID-19 back to work. Now, those conversations have been mainly in the construction and infrastructure of housing. But one thing we've asked them to look at is to also look at work programs or opportunities to employ people back in improving air quality. Like we know that we need to look at pavements. We need to look at some of these ideas like rooftops over parking lots that could employ people, and that means contractors, subcontractors, a ripple effect. Well, we can also benefit to making sure that the legislature knows that, and some immediate ideas such as employing people to actually plant trees. Folks without a college or high school degree can who have lost their jobs from the retail and restaurant business or other sectors that have been impacted. That's something that we could gear up in October, November, and December during the prime tree planting season to be able to do that if the legislature was going to support, say, AB 617 programs where we can target effects to support those communities. So I want to thank the staff because I think this gives us a lot of data to go to the state to say, as they look at responding to COVID-19, that they use it as through a prism of also how do we affect air quality as we employ and get our economy back to work again. So with that, thank you very much, Shelley. Great report. Thank you, Dr. all your team. And we'll go ahead and move on to our next item here on the agenda, which is our budget. And as our staff get ready for the presentation here for the budget, I do want to acknowledge that we've seen this budget a number of times. I think we've had a lot of input and from board members to the budget, and I appreciate our staff taking the time to take that into effect. So I don't think this will be, I don't want to lose a quorum here. So I don't think this will take long, but we do need an action here, a vote on this since the before we adjourn today. Jamil?
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Chair Guerra and directors. My name is Jamil Moons. I'm the Administrative Services Division Manager, and it is my pleasure to present the district's proposed budget at the second of two required public hearings. And as the chair mentioned, this is a very brief report, so it's really just a recap. We, as he mentioned, we have seen this budget before, and we appreciate all the input that has gone on into it. So for today, we are I'm just going to recap what we covered last month at the April hearing. kind of wrap things up and move forward. So at last month's meeting, the first public hearing, we proposed the budget and shared with you a lot of detail about that, as well as the fund balance trends that we were seeing with the proposed budget. We presented the fee schedule, which suggested a CPI adjustment. The board had a very good, robust discussion about that and directed staff to postpone that for 1 year. We also presented, as our director mentioned during his report earlier this morning, we presented recession scenarios, both at the moderate and severe level, to ensure that we are poised to address any revenue impacts that may occur as a result of this crisis. And looked at some timelines. As he reported, we are doing some very close benchmarking last year to this year, looking at our other in terms of permitting impacts. What are other jurisdictions doing in terms of revenue forecasting and reduction? So we're closely monitoring that, and we will be reporting that back to the board as we learn more. And then lastly, we're going to make sure that that information gets incorporated into our budget, and we'll be back to the board with more robust reports here into the future. The budget has been posted for 60 days for a comment period. And,
Jamil, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you alert Selena when you need the slides advanced?
Oh, thank you. Yes, I'm on the first slide, Selena. Thank you so much. I apologize for that. Okay. So the last bullet on the first slide is that today we are recommending that the board approve the FY 2021 budget and fee schedule. Next slide, please. So just a high level on our proposed budget for FY 2021, it is a overall reduction budget from the current year's budget to the next budget. It is $56.2 million. That's a reduction of $3.2 million. And it is a $500,000 reduction in our general fund and reflects a reduction in our overall FTE, our funded FTE, from 99.5 FTE down to 94.1. And as Alberto mentioned earlier, we are planning to staff at a level relatively around 88 FTE, so even under that 94, and hold those remaining vacancies as this crisis unfolds and as we have better information and can assess those impacts. Next slide, please. Excuse me. So in summary, the budget that was presented is critical and necessary to fund those activities, the core mission of the district. The fund balance trend shows a gradual use of reserves. We have those recession strategies ready and available to address revenue impacts as needed to preserve our fund balance at the budgeted levels. And of course, the 3.3 CPI adjustment to those various fees for the rules has been postponed and will be effective July 1st of 2021. And finally, we have committed to report back to you in the coming months and anticipate a full budget presentation in October, when we believe that, as Alberto said, we believe that some of these trends are going to be delayed. We should have, I think, a very, very good picture of what's going on at that. Of course, monitoring it closely between now and then to the extent a budget amendment is necessary and makes sense, we would be presenting that at mid-year. That's the targeted timeline. So with that, Chair Guerra and directors, we are asking you please to open and close the public hearing on the FY 2021 proposed budget and fee schedule, and to adopt a resolution approving the budget effective this coming July, the fee schedule effective a year from this coming July, and a reclass. We had a reclass of one of our positions that we mentioned last month from a fiscal assistant 2 to administrative specialist, and that would be effective the pay period following the approval of this item today. With that, that concludes my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions the directors may have.
Thank you, Jamil.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to open and close the hearing and approve the budget.
It's been moved to open and close the public hearing. It's been moved to open and close the public hearing and approve the budget by Board Member Hansen. It's been seconded by Carr. Is there any questions from the board at the moment? If not, seeing none, anyone on the phone? Director Natoli or Director Lee? Seeing none. then I will go to our board clerk. Board clerk, Madam Clerk, do we have anyone in public comment on this item?
Do not.
Seeing none. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate the staff on this. We will be seeing this again in October. I do want to highlight that our staff have taken a very tough position of reducing the budget very conservatively. We understand that they still have work to do. Many of the permits that they oversee are in the industrial and manufacturing area. And while the restaurant and retail area has taken a hit, the industrial and manufacturing area has still been one that has been working and providing some work for the air district. So I appreciate you guys doing more with less and keeping the health of the organization. And with that, I'll go ahead, seeing no board members wanting to speak, I'll ask the Madam Clerk to call the roll.
If I can have the directors unmute their microphones real fast. Thank you. Director Carr?
Aye.
Director Daniels?
Aye.
Director Frost?
Aye.
Director Gaylord?
Aye.
Director Guerra?
Aye.
Director Hansen?
Aye.
Director Harris?
Aye.
Director Kennedy?
Aye.
Director Lamson?
Aye.
Director Lee?
Aye.
Director Natoli?
Aye.
Director Peters? Absent. Director Cerna? Absent. Director Terry?
Aye.
Motion passes.
Okay, measure passes. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our last item, public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have anyone in the public wishing to speak on items not on the agenda?
No, we do not.
Thank you. Any board member ideas, comments, or AB 1, 2, 3, 4 reports? I'm assuming no one's traveling these days. Seeing none, I want to thank everyone. Anyone on the phone? Sorry, I didn't ask on that. That have any board comments?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. Don?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I appreciate this. This was a very productive meeting. We're going to adjourn this hearing at 10:11 a.m. Have a safe and healthy weekend, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Bye.
Good job. Bye.
Take a look.